Accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities. Makes the world better for everyone, online as well as in person. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the blind blogger Maxwell Ivy, and this is the Accessibility Advantage, where we will be advocating for more accessibility for and inclusion of people with disabilities based on the positive benefits as opposed to focusing on strictly on compliance. And you can find me at theaccessibilityadvantage.com. And if your organization decides that you're interested in improving accessibility in your online presence, then please do reach out to me and use the link on the homepage to schedule a time to talk. You can also use that to ask to come on the podcast if you want to. So today I'm going to be speaking with a really interesting woman. We've had several conversations for her podcast, and I think we're going to have another good one today. Her name is Jackie Pelegrin, and she is a instructional designer, author, professor, and podcast host with nearly 2 decades of experience in higher education. She hosts a weekly podcast called Designing with Love that shares practical strategies, tools, and stories to help professionals create more engaging educational experiences. Her forthcoming book, titled Designing with Love, the Essential Instructional Design Handbook, will be out shortly. And the one thing I really love about her, and this sentence stuck with me, and it'll probably stick with me for a while. She's in her bio. It says her insights help audiences make education accessible and impactful, and I think that's what we want, regardless of the setting. So you can find her at designingwithloveblog.com. And thank you, Jackie, and welcome to the Accessibility Advantage.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here and to talk about these things that we're passionate about for all people, all learners. So thank you so much for having me on.
And you're very welcome. And this is going to be even more essential as we go along, because so many people are starting to understand that to be successful, we have to be lifelong learners. And that means we're going to be learning as our bodies and minds change over time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We've talked about that offline. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you tell people a little bit about your background, both in education and accessibility, and then we can talk about helping them create more inclusive instructional educational experiences.
Yes, I'd love to. So my background is kind of interesting. I started thinking I was going to go into business. So I have my undergraduate degree in business with an emphasis in marketing. I got that from University of Phoenix, and then decided to go back and get my Master of Business Administration, thinking I was going to go into market research. And then it didn't quite pan out as I was hoping. So then I decided to go into higher education about 20 years ago and work in an admissions office. And then lo and behold, one day they were offering a new program in instructional design, a master's program. And I thought to myself, wow, this is great. As I started reading the courses, Max, I just became just so just enthroned by it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Each course just sparked my attention more and more. And I thought, I think this is what I've always wanted to do. I just didn't know there was a name for it. I didn't know what instructional design was at that time. And so I was thinking, I'll get just the certificate, right? Just get the 4 or 5 classes, because I already had my master's. But then as I kept reading the classes, I thought, if I just get the certificate, I'm not going to be satisfied. It's not going to cut it for me. So I decided to just jump with both feet and just get the master's degree. And lo and behold, they had a certificate that was embedded in that master. So it was even more incentive to get it. And when I got my certificate, halfway through the program, they had 2 positions that opened up in learning and development in that department. And one was for an instructional designer, one was for a trainer. And so I went to my manager and I said, what do you think? Do you think I should apply for either one or both? Or what do you think I should do? And she said, well, sit down and think about what you want to do. day in and day out? Do you want to train people, or do you want to be the one creating the training and making the impact in that way? And I'm like, I want to be the one creating the training. So she said, there's your answer, do instructional design. So I applied for the position, even though they required a master's, I still applied. She said, go for it, just apply, at least get the experience. So I did that. And the manager said, well, Jackie, you know what? I'm willing to offer you the position if you promise to finish your master's here at Walden. And I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll finish my master's. So I did, and did that for a few years. And so the rest is history. And since then, I've been loving working in higher education, doing instructional design, creating materials, not only for students, but for my colleagues as well, and doing professional development. So it's been exciting to see education evolving and changing and understanding accessibility and how important it is. So I love it. It's great.
Right. So when were you first exposed to accessibility as something that's a need within higher education?
Yes. So, and we've talked about this story, but I'd love to share this story every time. That when I was working with one of my colleagues, a curriculum developer, we were working on the professional counseling program at Grand Canyon University, and they have an accessibility office that will actually come to us, and they'll say, if there's something that a student that has a known disability, or they're working with the accessibility office to say, I can't do this assignment, it's not something I'm able to do, then they'll contact our department, and then we have to make the change to make it accessible. So we happened to have a blind student in that program at the time, and he actually contacted his professor, and then it got to the accessibility office, and then went to us. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't do this assignment because I'm blind. The materials aren't accessible. I can't do the assignment. You need to give me I need to have an alternative assignment. So we had to literally, Max, like rush that day and drop everything to make it accessible, because he was in that week of the class. And so we didn't want him to be late on his assignment. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So it really brought forth for her and I that moment where we thought, you know what, we can't do this every single time. It's just not feasible for us to drop everything, do this, and make the student wait for that. That's not a good experience for any student, right? To have to be able to hold off and wait for them to do their assignment. It should be a seamless process for them, and they shouldn't have to reach out to anybody. It should just be naturally ingrained in there. So we kind of got together with my manager, and we said, we need to be more proactive about this and really think through accessibility and what does that mean. And so he really that student brought it to the forefront. And when he graduated, I got to actually meet him. And so it was really neat to bring that full circle. And I thanked him, so he was known as the blind cowboy student. So yeah. So I said, I don't even remember his name now. I wish I remembered his name, because this was years ago. This is about 10 years ago. But I just thanked him, and I said, may I shake your hand and really thank you for bringing this to the forefront? And he said, absolutely. He said, this is something I am passionate about, and I advocate for not just people that are blind like me. And you do this too, Max. You advocate for everybody. So it just really, that experience, it changed everything with me and with education. So it's amazing how that was the one catalyst that changed it all for me.
Right. And that's a great story. But, y'all did something that I would say probably 95% of institutions are probably not going to do when they get that first request/complaint about a lack of accessibility. They aren't going to think this could be a catalyst to create wholesale change or establish a system that could lead to a competitive advantage both for the students and for the institution. Most organizations aren't going to think that way. And that's another place where we're going to have to change the way people approach it, because I personally believe one of the best places to start with accessibility is in the inbox of whoever does customer support or technical support.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Well, that's good. That and thanks to your student and to your team, and also to Walden University that they were proactive in that area.
Right.
So as you're doing this for the very first time, trying to figure this out with just one student with just one disability, what are some of the things you learned that are important to having a holistic or a healthy approach to accessibility in education?
Yes. So one of the things that kept coming up is the materials. So, for example, videos. Before we didn't think about having closed captions and having transcripts for videos. So those little things that seem so simple, right, and so ordinary for someone that has a vision impairment or something like that, it really makes a difference when they can be able to interact with that content. And worker is she's colorblind, and I have a vision disability myself. I have glaucoma, so I can't see bright images and things on the screen that are really bright. It causes strain on my eyes. And then with her having the color blindness, we were able to actually look at things and point things out to our other colleagues. And so, for example, the color blindness, she couldn't tell the difference between orange and red. They looked the same to her. So I said, oh, okay. So even though I didn't have the color blindness, I was able to go to her and say, can you tell what this means, the difference between these colors? And she's like, nope, I can't tell the difference. So, and then when I would have colleagues say to me, is that too bright? And I would say, yeah, I can't really look at that very well. So we all had our own little challenges that we were able to say, okay, let's look at this and kind of put ourselves in the learner's shoes and see, would they be able to access this? So yeah, so it really brought that to the forefront as well. And just being able to make sure that if we had a video assignment or something like that, and then we thought, well, our deaf students going to be able to listen to it, or our blind students going to be able to see it, right? Do we need to have an alternative assignment already built into the classroom for the instructor, so that if they have someone that has an accommodation, an official accommodation, then they can be able to have that readily available and on hand, so they don't have to scramble and try to contact the ADA office and then we have to scramble. So it made a difference to be able to do that. So it's something I advocate for all the time. When I see things that aren't really accessible, I bring it to my colleagues' attention and I say, we might want to work with our faculty on this and see how we can make it better for all the students in the program.
Right. And I imagine that part of this process included, it continues to include, educating the instructional staff, the professors, the teaching assistants, so that they create content from the beginning that's easier to adapt.
Right, exactly. Yep. And especially now with technology, educational technology being so much at the forefront, a lot of companies have that built in, which is good. But at the same time, we can't assume that they're all going to have that. So it's always good for us to do our due diligence and make sure, if we're going to have a third-party software for the university, then we're making sure that not only does it have the privacy elements, but it has the accessibility elements already built into it, and that it's going to work with the existing learning management system that we have in a way that it's not going to hinder our learners. So yeah, that's so important too, to look at the technology and make sure that if we're incorporating that, because honestly, I mean, faculty, they like the next shiny thing, but it's not always going to work the best, right? For accessibility, right? So making sure that it's truly going to meet the needs of all learners, and making sure that, because for example, that screen readers, they were developed for those that have a vision impairment, right?
Yeah.
But what's amazing is that, and even audio as well, those different, the captions and things like that were created for people that have not the vision, but the hearing impairment. But what's interesting is that I learned this a couple months ago, and it really brought to my attention that those elements, even though they were created for specific people that had different impairments like vision and audio, that they can also be helpful for people that are in noisy environments. And so the closed captioning can be helpful if they're commuting to work, right? And they're in a noisy train or something like that. Yep. Or if they're at work and there's all kinds of people around them. I used to work in offices where we'd be all crammed into cubicles on a floor. And so we had to make sure we had the ability to access that content. So it's really a good thing, I think, that's helpful across the board for everybody.
Right, exactly. And another example is how some people just learn differently, and there are some people who will learn better from a transcript than a video, even if they have no impairments at all. So,
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I think that's important, accounting for different learning styles. And, it's interesting too, because we have a lot of our training materials in my department that are text-based. And although that's good, overall, there's no opportunities for, I mean, there are some, but I'm trying to advocate for that and say, let's get more things that are going to give learners a different way of being able to learn the content, because some of them do like to learn through video, just short little 5-minute videos or something like that, where they can learn the process instead of reading a 3-page job aid. They might want to just watch a 5-minute video instead. And so giving them that opportunity to choose how they go about consuming the content, I think, is just as important, right? So yeah.
Right. And plus, let's be honest, there are a lot of people who can create a more coherent 5-minute video than they can a print text document,
Right.
Even if we do sometimes have to remind them that they can't use directions as if they're giving directions to a sighted person. So,
right.
But one thing you said a little way back that I wanted to bring out to people just to make sure they didn't miss it is you mentioned having to test the third-party tools, because the instructors like the new stuff, but the new stuff may not work. And I think that's very important now, because we have so much new technology that's supposed to improve access for disabled people. And a lot of it is either not really accessible or is not creating the level of accessibility people are hoping it will. And I think it was important that you reminded people, if you're using third-party apps or third-party content creation systems, you have to make the effort to ensure those are also accessible.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. That kind of it made me think of an example of where I'm, you and I met through Podmatch, and I've actually met some others through Podmatch that I'm now working with on doing curriculum, and I'm co-hosting 6 podcasts. I can't believe I'm co-hosting 6 podcasts, but I'm doing it with Daniel Lucas. But I'm also working with Russell, and Russell Van Brocklin I met through Podmatch, and I'm helping him with his dyslexic curriculum and bringing it online. So we just finished the parent version, and now I'm working on the teacher and the tutor version of all the material, and then we're going to get it up online. But it really brought to mind that there's all these different things out there that he talks about, not just the dyslexic students, but also ones that have learning disabilities and impairments and things like that, and so it just really just brought that to mind. And so every experience I have, I learn something new. So it's really great to have that. Yes.
And from my conversations with people that have dyslexia, I'm learning it's one of the more complicated disabilities to design for, because the solutions are very personal, it seems.
Right, exactly. And so I'm learning so much about how parents can approach that, right? If they're doing it at the kitchen table at home. And then now I'm learning the difference with the professionals, like the tutors and the teachers, and how to approach it with them, and the differences. I mean, there's some things that are similar in how they help the child or the student, but there's some things that are different in how they approach that, because the educator is going to have a different mindset than the parent will. So it's definitely something I'm learning more about, and just the statistics around it. It's mind blowing sometimes. I'm like, wow, like the percentage of students that are dyslexic that also have ADHD, or that do have a vision impairment or something like that. And it didn't click for me until I started working on this. And I thought, oh, that's true. And Russell even said something to me one time. He said, not all students they're not all going to say they have a disability, especially if it's not apparent that they have one. So they may hide that and try to mask it. And I'm like, wow, that's very interesting. That they do that. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge and a necessary tool that these tutors, teachers, and parents need, for sure. Yes.
Right. So what can people do to address testing? Because that seems to be one of the places where there's still a lot of issues. And as you mentioned earlier, if you can't get the test, you can't get the certification, so you can't get the money or the job to generate the money. So, what are
Right.
some things we're doing well in testing, and what are some places where people really need to be doing better?
Right. So as far as educational testing,
Yes, yeah,
yes, I would say probably, yeah, I would say kind of going back to like the third party software, same thing with the testing tools. And, if they're doing proxy testing, institutions, or even employers need to make sure that anytime that they're testing for something that, like we were talking about, making sure that it's accessible. So for example, if they're using Pearson for their testing platform to do their proxy testing, and they're doing it in person, just make sure you have your accommodations ready to go before students come in and take a test, right? Especially if it's for a national exam or something like that, and it's a 5-hour test, and then you don't have those accommodations in place for those students in person. And same thing with with professional certifications, like for example Microsoft and all these different companies, Google, they have their certification programs. So again, making sure that that all learners can access the content and they have the opportunity to study and get the material that they need, because it's not, I think too, it's not just about the testing center or anything like that, whether it's online or in person, but also the materials, right? I think we tend to forget that the study materials also need to be accessible. So I think that gets overlooked quite a bit. So just making sure that every avenue and every part of the process to get them to that is accessible for them.
right. The signing up for the test, the submission of information in advance, the materials that you have to navigate in order to give the correct answers, all of that stuff needs to be taken into account.
Right. And I'm sure you've had plenty of opportunities to test systems and everything and see where it goes right, where it goes wrong, and yeah, and be able to give that feedback. So that's important.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that, and maybe you can share your experience in this area. I find that quite often something can be deemed accessible, but still not be really enjoyable to use because the designers didn't have a thorough enough understanding of how adaptive technology users navigate the internet.
True. Right. That user experience and the user the tools, right, that we're using to build it. That's true. I think sometimes these web designers or app designers, yeah, I just wonder if they're just forgetting a whole segment of the population. I often wonder that. I've seen websites that look like they're from the 1990s and they're still around today. And I'm thinking, wow, if that looks like it was built in the 90s, I doubt it's accessible. And I even have a hard time as a sighted person going through it. So I can't imagine someone like yourself or that has some type of other impairment, how they would be able to navigate it if I have a hard time navigating it and getting around. So yeah, it's pretty shocking. And I'll do the same thing as you, Max. I'll even reach out if it's that difficult for me to navigate. I'll see if I can reach out to their web team or just submit something and just say, you might want to have your web design team take a look at it and see if you can improve it, make it more accessible, not just for sighted people like me, but just for the everyday individual, right? So yeah.
Okay, well, let's all promise not to visit Max's Carnival Equipment Brokering site, the Midway Marketplace, because it is definitely not accessible. It started life out in HTML and got migrated to WordPress, and now it's kind of like just there because it's part of my origin story, and I can't bring myself to shelve it. But it's definitely not accessible. So as a designer, are the tools that you use to create a course, a curriculum, the materials to tell people about a new course, is that process accessible? And what are some things we could be doing in that area?
That's good. Typically, we use different tools that are internal for us, but using those everyday Microsoft tools to build those, and just to even send a syllabus off, we utilize Microsoft Word. So we try to make sure it's universal, that everyone knows how to use Microsoft Word, or at least, something that's not foreign to them. So that's good. And then when it comes to the technology, we just do, like I mentioned, we do our homework. We make sure to work. We have our publishing department and anyone else that we come alongside with, and we make sure that we test it out and we make sure it's accessible. Ask all the good questions to make sure if we're going to integrate it into the curriculum that it meets the needs of everyone. So for example, there's this tool out there, it's called GoReact, and it's a video recording platform. So what it allows students to do is, and it's integrated with our learning management system. So it's really neat. And it allows the students to go into the assignment and they're able to record a video of themselves. And we had to make sure before we decided to start using this for different courses that we wanted to integrate this with, that it had not only the privacy features like FERPA, HIPAA, things like that, but we also had to make sure it had the accessibility and met those standards as well with that. So so it was a kind of a neat experience. And now we're doing it with different courses for counseling and social work and starting to integrate it in there. So it started in College of Education. They tested it out. They did all the homework they needed to do. And now we're implementing it more campus wide now. So it's, but it's exciting, to see that they did all the pre-work up front so that they could make sure that it would be accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I recently had some experiences with both video and audio because, as you know, a lot of organizations are switching to AI-based processes to gather information in the interview process, or if you're pitching an organization. And, just like anything else, there are good examples and bad examples. I did one where it was strictly audio, where it was almost like having a conversation, or like those interviews they record between a reporter here and an astronaut in the space station,
Oh, yes,
so
those.
there were there were pauses, but I understood. I was never in doubt as to what my next step was. But in the same vein, I've had ones where they wanted me to record video where I don't even have a way of telling when I'm supposed to start talking.
Right. So you don't know what your starting point is, what your ending point is. So that can be challenging. Absolutely.
Right. Or even an easy way to navigate to find out what did get recorded, if anything. So
right. Yes. Can you play back what you recorded to make sure that you are satisfied with it, or do you want to re-record it? How do you even get there, right, to do that? So it's easy to navigate all the tools and features that you want to be able to use as a user, right?
But that is good to hear how that was done first in the Department of Education, and then now in y'all's department, to make sure that it's going to work for everybody depending on how they are going to be using it. So, and that's a good reminder that very few people in an organization know all of what they need to know, and that having a team, even if it's a team that changes depending on the objective, is a really important part to succeeding at accessibility anything.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's good to have a good team behind you and know that you're not alone in the process, and that you have that support and backup that you need. And so I'm very thankful that my manager and everyone around me in the department, and even in other departments that we work with, to bring the curriculum to life, that they all support that. And so it's a refreshing thing, because sometimes I've been at organizations where I've gotten pushback about it, and I advocate for something, and then they're like, "Oh, well, we got to get this out. It's going to take too long." And I'm like, but do you realize that if we just get it out and we just do it as is, that we're going to have to make changes to it, and we're going to get students or someone that's going to say, "I can't access this," or "I can't do my assignment," and then we're just going to be back where we started. So I'm like, it's advantageous for us to just do it in the moment and put those processes in place, and not just wing it every time, but actually have a good process in place for it.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking that's pretty much every app developer I've ever talked to.
Wow. They just wing it, right? Or they don't.
We're like, man, we don't have time for accessibility. Let's just get this thing out where we can start selling it, or start getting subscriptions, or start getting people on the wait list. So
right.
But you did mention something earlier that is important. One of the things that is really needed in good accessibility is having input from people who use the product or service. But in your case, you have to worry about the HIPAA and the other one, whatever that other one was called.
Oh, FERPA for educational privacy, right? Yes.
So then how do y'all navigate getting good feedback so you can know that what you're building is actually succeeding at its intended purpose?
That's great. Great question. So we do have at the end of each course that runs, every course section, the faculty and the students have an opportunity to leave feedback. So they leave feedback about the course materials. Was it easily accessible? Did they understand it? Was it, different questions like that? Was it, did it align with the course objectives and things like that? And then they ask about the instructor and all of those things. So they have a chance to leave feedback about the curriculum. So as a professor myself, I do leave detailed feedback about my experiences, things that worked well and things that didn't. And what's really great is the department I work in, we actually get all of that, and the colleges do too. So all the college leadership gets that feedback, and then we take that and we compile it, and then we look at how we can improve the curriculum. So it's great because we're getting that feedback from the faculty that teach the courses, and then from the students that are experiencing it and taking those courses. And it's nice because sometimes, you know that there's organizations or institutions that say they want feedback, but then you don't see changes happening. So you often wonder, where does all that feedback go? Does it just go out in outer space somewhere, or are they really taking it to heart? So I'm glad to know that working behind the scenes and then also working in the front lines as a faculty, that I have that opportunity to make a difference. And I can see that we do take it to heart, and we make it part of the revision process so that we can make the courses better all the time.
All right. So what you're saying then is that accessibility, the quality of it or lack of it for each course, is part of surveys that are done at the end of the course. So everybody has the opportunity to answer a question in an anonymous format that gives y'all the feedback you need to keep improving the access.
Correct. Right. And that's the key there. I like that you brought that up. It's anonymous. So it gives those the opportunity to be as honest as possible and just give what's on their mind, right? And what they think is working and what's not. So that's really important. And what's really great too, Max, is that not only do the faculty and the students get that opportunity to give that feedback, and it's given to the college, they get that aggregate data. And then in curriculum development in my department, we get that aggregate data as well. But also the faculty that teach the courses, they get the feedback from the students, so they can see how they can improve on different aspects of their teaching and making things more accessible. So it's really great to see, what I do as a professor, what's working, and is there anything I need to adjust at that level in all the classes I teach. So it's great. I like to be able to get that feedback as well.
Okay, so y'all, I'm speaking with Jackie Pelegrin, and she is a instructional designer, author, professor, podcast host with nearly 2 decades of experience in higher education. And her website is designingwithloveblog.com. I'm tripping over that word, but
that's okay.
So we've talked a lot about the traditional higher education system.
Right.
But before we end, could you spend some time talking about how this is dealt with or applies to businesses, training employees, evaluating employees based on, and what are some of the things you see that they are doing right or not doing as well as they should in the area of learning design in the business world?
That's great. Yeah, I love that because I'm involved in our training team and professional development in my department. So I get to see day in and day out what's working and what's not. And in my experience being in learning and development before that really helped too. And so I would say the things that are working well is at least now, it didn't used to be the case, but now what I'm seeing is that the employees are involved more in the process, and they have a voice and in the process. Before, what I used to see is that employees would only get to see after it was released, right, when it went live, and then they gave feedback. But now I'm seeing that employees are involved earlier in that process, so they feel like they have more ownership in that, and so they can give feedback early on, which I think for instructional designers and developers, that's really important to get that feedback early on, so that way you can make the content as accessible as possible without having to make all the content, right? Get it ready to go. And then you get feedback and you're like, oh no, now I have to start all over again and spend all this time. And as we know, time is money, and organizations want to keep continuously getting the material out, right, as quickly as
Right.
possible. Sometimes they say, we wanted it yesterday. And I'm like, okay. Or we want it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, really? I don't think I can do that, but let's be more realistic, right, on what I can do. Or they want to skip steps in the process, like we talked about earlier. So they want to skip a needs assessment and not look to see, is training really the issue or is it something else? So yeah, so I see sometimes, or they want to skip evaluation. They want to implement and then just see how it goes. And I'm like, no, we need to evaluate. At least let's do a soft evaluation, then see how it goes, and then we can do a deeper evaluation. So yeah, so it's challenging sometimes to help them understand the importance of that analysis at the beginning and the evaluation at the end, because it informs all the learning that's taking place, and yeah, and making sure that the materials are the best they can be for all the learners within the organization. So yeah.
Right. And one of the things most people aren't aware of is that accessibility is kind of fragile. If you try to put it in the middle or the end, whatever you have had from previous projects can get broke. Or as you're trying to fix version 1 with version 2, you could break part of version 1 that was working just fine. So doing it from the beginning and throughout the entire process is the most sensible way to do it. But again, good luck making them do that.
That's true. Yes. So I think it's something where and I think it comes down to a culture shift. I think, Max, where it really needs to be part of the culture, part of, not just part of the process, but part of the culture, and knowing that this is an important aspect, and it's going to make if you make the training as the best it can be for the employees, you're going to have not only well-trained employees, but then it impacts customer service, like you were talking about. So it's all cyclical, right? And if you have good customer service, you're going to have repeat customers, and that's going to help those, higher up that want that bottom line there, right? They want the numbers. So at the end of the day, good training equals good employees that are trained well, and then it equals good customer service. So it all ties into each other. So if they can see the importance of creating that good training and making it part of their culture day in and day out, I think it's going to make the company more profitable, and that's what they want at the end of the day. They want more profit. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I would love to ask you how we create the mind shifts, but I don't have an answer to that question myself. So I'm going to leave that one alone.
Oh yeah, I know. It's a big one. Yeah, I think it starts with the employees themselves, and that mind shift, and then you have to have the buy-in of the employees and then the managers, right? So you have to have support of the management team too, and all those up above. But I think if you can get the buy-in from everybody, I think that makes a difference, and they don't see it as extra work. Because I think sometimes they see accessibility as, oh, this is extra. We have to, but it's actually embedded as part of the process and a necessary aspect. Yeah, I think that can help.
Yeah. And this is where generally, a lot of people lean on compliance, and compliance might get you some efforts in accessibility, but it doesn't get you buy-in. Buy-in comes when you can express the value of the proposition in a way that makes them want to do it.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. So I think getting to the kind of that needs assessment, right? Figuring out where the pain points are and where the struggles are. I think that can really help to get that buy-in, because then you can uncover, like I like to call it, peeling back the onion. You're peeling back all those layers, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the real reason behind why they're resisting this? Is there something that maybe they had a bad experience somewhere, or maybe it's something that They didn't feel like they had the support of management prior to that. So yeah, I think uncovering that can really, really help, and do that deep dive early on in the process, and then be the champion for that. Just say, hey, let's have accessibility champions, people that we know that are passionate about it and can advocate for those individuals, and have a few people that within your department or within your organization that can say, okay, we're going to have champions that are going to be part of that, just like other aspects, like with technology and things like that. So maybe that could be something they can do too, is have those people that can advocate for everybody as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that things are being done from a approach of accessibility as a valued part of the overall educational system. That's very encouraging, and something they need to be celebrated for. And I find it strange that many organizations that are making strong efforts in the area of accessibility, they seem to ignore the part where they educate the public or promote the efforts that they've been making.
Right. It almost seems like it's a dirty little secret or something. I don't know. That just came up to me. I just, like, we have to keep this secret, I don't know why. I don't know why it's something they want to keep hidden or secret. Yeah, it's like that dirty little secret. Like, we're not gonna make this known, but I think they should. Yeah, I think it's important to do that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I know that as somebody who works on accessibility with the people in the SaaS community, the software as a service, that that I often offer services to help promote their investment, and so far nobody's ever said yes.
Wow! Out of all those opportunities,
yeah, I know, it doesn't make any sense at all.
It doesn't, especially if it's all about customer service and wanting to make it the best it can be. Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, I would say that my closest, I've done some work for Less Annoying CRM, and it's an accessible CRM platform, and they wrote a couple of blog posts about what they've done the last 2 years. But I feel like that they are doing so much good work, they should be talking about it more. And then Alex Sanfilippo at Podmatch, I'm on the advisory board there. And when I interviewed him last year, I found out that he is constantly taking grief over his decision to not only invest in accessibility, but to go public about it. So you could be right. It could just be one of those dirty subjects that we're just not going to talk about it.
And I think if more people were open about it, more organizations were open about it, then others that don't have it in place or do a poor job of it would see, oh, this is important because this organization is successful and they're not ashamed to talk about it, right? Or to make it known. So I think at the end of the day, it really helps those other ones to get up to par on it and get up to speed. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to point at Starbucks, but they're such a huge corporation. Most people don't see their businesses as anything like that business,
Right.
That's one of the few I can think of off the top of my head that is very open about their investment in accessibility.
Absolutely, right. And I think education too is kind of one of those. Over the years I've seen. Training doesn't get as much attention as it should. They want more of the forefront of the things, but training gets overlooked too, and that can be hard. So, they tend to want to if a company is going to take and actually, make it good, they have to make sure that they invest the time and the resources into it. And so it seems like whenever a company is downsizing, one of the first places to be downsized is training and development. So it's kind of sad.
Yeah. For those of y'all that can't see us, I stuck my tongue out when she was saying that, because it just I'm trying to encourage more people to do audio description. So, but just one last thing I'd like you to speak to, because it's something that comes up for me all the time, and I'm sure you have experience and probably an opinion, is the general belief is that AI is going to solve all of our problems with accessibility, that we could even get to the point where accessibility is localized so that websites and courses and other products adjust to the technology that we have on our devices. But what's your current experience with AI, or do you have any experience with it that's relevant to the educational system?
Yes, it's interesting because we're utilizing it to help us create the curriculum, and I feel like it's still in its infancy of it. But I agree with you. I think adaptive learning, which is what you're talking about, I think it's going to get better over time. I'm already seeing the effects of that. Where, for example, for Grand Canyon University, they have different chatbots that they've created for different disciplines. So they have one for nursing, and they have one for doctoral studies, and another one for education, and they're all accessible, which is great. And we also have for counseling, we started this, and it's now in they're starting to do it in nursing. They're called virtual interactive personas. And so what it is it's an AI model that they utilize, and it looks like a real person. So they can actually do mock counseling sessions where the AI model is the client.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the student plays the counselor, and they do it in a safe environment. But what's great, Max, is when I tested out this virtual interactive persona for counseling, I was able to see that it had all the accessibility built into it. So our web services department that we work with on all of this media and everything, they know really, all those staff there, they are well versed on accessibility, which warms my heart. I love it. So when I looked at all the features, I was like, okay, so how is a blind student or how is a deaf student going to be able to interact with this? And sure enough, they had transcripts. They had the what is that called? I said it earlier. Now I can't
sign
think of
language, the closed captions.
Closed captions. Yes. Yep. So it had transcripts, closed captions, and all of that. And they could take notes, they could speak into it. So if if they couldn't type, they could speak into that and do their notes, case study notes and things like that. So so I tested it out, and I looked at it from an accessibility standpoint and gave them feedback on some areas. And so it was a privilege to do that. And so I'm glad that they've got a model for that going forward. So I can see AI technology just only getting better and providing that adaptive learning experience that you were talking about, and being able to tailor the learning experience for each individual student or learner. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, that seems to be the hope, that for pretty much anything that we do online, that eventually the devices will adapt to our needs as opposed to the other way around. And we'll see if AI can actually deliver on the promises. You've made a very important point there. It's kind of a side issue, but because of how fast AI has grown and how quickly it's become part of our daily lives, we think it's been around forever, but it really hasn't.
Right. So true. Yes. I mean, I think back to like several years ago when when you get onto a website, like for example, just a product website, right? And you would see the little chat window in the corner. Right. And then you click on that, and it's like, can I help you with something, before you would get to someone live for customer service or to help you, tech support, whatever it was. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe that was a version of AI and we just didn't realize that it was. Probably was in some form or another. And just now it seems like it's more at the forefront. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's still in its infancy, and it keeps changing day by day or week by week even, so it can be a little bit hard to keep up with it and know exactly how it's going to impact learning materials and just overall experiences for individuals. So I always tell my colleagues, we got to buckle up, because it's going fast. So it's like a roller coaster. It's like up, down, all around, upside down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but when you drive a car at Daytona, they got a 5-point harness you get to put over yourself. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Well, and then when you get on that roller coaster, they strap you in really tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Jackie, I really appreciate you spending some time and educating us on accessibility and helping us see how important it is, and how we can do better at including people of all abilities. Would you have some final thoughts for our audience?
Yes, I would just reiterate, make accessibility part of the process, like we were talking about from the very beginning. Don't try to do it, like you said, Max, in the middle or at the end, because like you said, it won't work well. You'll find that it'll break something along the way. So start it at the very beginning and do that full needs assessment and see what are the pain points, what are the challenges that learners or users have, and how can we solve that? And in what ways can we solve that? So I think starting from the very beginning and making it part of your process is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of energy and tears along the way. So yeah.
Yeah. I should clip that quote out and just put that whenever somebody asks me that question.
There you go.
All right. So do you have anything besides the book? Do you have anything cool coming up I should tell people about?
Let's see. So I'm approaching next month my 100th episode for my podcast, so it's exciting. And I actually have a mini series, you're part of it, for accessibility. And so I did some things on UDL and accessibility and things like that. So I'm looking forward to people checking that out on my website, so they can learn more about accessibility and how it works and not just education, but in general. So so very exciting things coming. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Just hang on a minute. Let me do my outro. So I want to thank Jackie for joining us. Again, you can find her at designingwithloveblog.com. And I do encourage you to check out her podcast. It is an amazing accomplishment to get to 100 episodes as a host of any kind of show. So hope y'all will definitely check out the podcast, consider subscribing, and seeing what all y'all can learn about not just accessibility in education, but in many other things. I do hope that y'all will visit my website, theaccessibilityadvantage.com. I'm definitely available to share my knowledge on accessibility for your online presence through writing, speaking, or consulting. And my podcast, The Accessibility Advantage, is sneaking up on 15 episodes, thank goodness. So I do hope y'all will check that out. I appreciate the fact that y'all have many other obligations on your time, and you've chosen to spend some of that time with us. And I want to know how much I appreciate that. And I do hope that you will take care of yourself, and that we will see you again next time on The Accessibility Advantage. Disabled people, we tell our friends and share to our social sites. Don't think about how hard it is. Just focus on those dollar signs. 'Cause accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities.
Item chooser menu. 1 to 2 items, end stream button, end stream button, end the stream, and 5 outro groups, not end stream button, StreamYard.